everyone. My name is Steven. We are back for another episode of the ACC Podcast. Really happy to be here talking with Chris Chalfoun. He is in charge of ecosystem growth at Ava Labs. And there is one thing that is important in blockchain, and that's, of course, the proper infrastructure. But without community, the argument to be made is there's not much going on. So really excited to get into this conversation with Chris today. Thanks so much for being here. Chris, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Thanks, Steven. Doing good. Thank you for having me. Like you said, I'm excited to jump into ecosystem growth and kind of what that entails, right? It's such a broad name. We see ecosystem growth, business development kind of thrown around. What does that really mean? What are the responsibilities? How do we drive growth? How do we drive people, builders, developers, community to really focus in on what's important in the ecosystem, right? If you come into crypto, there's Avalanche, there's Solana, there's Base, there's all these chains, right? Everyone just gets confused. What do they do? What are we supposed to do? So I'm very excited to speak about that and kind of, let the audience know, hey, what are we doing at Avalanche and how can you participate today?
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for that short little teaser there. We're going to get into all of those good things because you touch on a lot that we will be diving into today. And kind of just reiterating what I said at the top, just if there's one thing that's just as important as having a quality blockchain that has, powerful infrastructure, fast, and it's scalable, it's having a solid community, a solid ecosystem. And lucky for us today, we're talking about, Avalanche and Ava Labs, which kind of has both going for it. Super popular because of how solid its fundamental infrastructure is, sub-second finality, and just making sure that everything is just going through as fast as possible. So kind of just jumping right into it, why don't you just kind of explain for people who are learning, such as myself as well, we got Avalanche and we have Ava Labs, kind of what differentiates the two, and I guess why does it really matter to differentiate those two?
Yeah, it's a good question. So think of Avalanche as the platform, right? Avalanche is the blockchain as we all know it. That's the blockchain that anyone could come and build a decentralized application on the C chain, right? The main chain is composed of three chains: the X chain, the P chain, and the C chain. Those other chains are mostly for validator work. Nothing really the average user has to worry about unless you're a validator. But on the C chain, it's more the public permissionless chain. That's where anyone can come, tap into the liquidity, tap into the tooling that's available on that chain, where you can launch an application, right? That's where the liquid lives. That's where the users live, etc. To get into the question between Avalabs and Avalanche, so let's take a step back and know that there's two entities that kind of work for the Avalanche platform. So that's Ava Labs and the Avalanche Foundation. They're two separate entities. However, we're working for the same greater good, which is the Avalanche blockchain. The Ava Labs is just the U.S. entity, the U.S. company that kind of foresees the blockchain as a whole, right? So that's where you see the partnerships with whether it's a government entity or a bank entity or any sort of corporation. Ava Labs is focused on making that partnership per se. And we don't just offer the blockchain as as a service that people can use or a product that people can use. We have a couple other products as well. So Ava Labs offers Ava Cloud, which is a blockchain as a service. So if let's say you're a big company, you don't really know how to bootstrap validators, you don't really know how to have wallets for your users that are running in the background. We provide that service. We provide Ava Cloud, which they'll work with you for pricing. I know they have a discounted rate through 2025, just as like kind of a bootstrapping mechanism so people can adopt this technology. And then we have the core wallet as well. So the core wallet is Avalanche's official wallet, available on mobile app, available through Chrome, Firefox, all of that. I think actually it's just on Chrome right now, but other browsers to follow. So those are the services that Ava Labs offers.
Cool. So kind of just like summarizing, so Avalanche is really just kind of referring to the platform itself, perhaps like the blockchain, but for all intents and purposes, Ava Labs is like basically the business, like all of the lead acquiring, all of the kind of marketing, advertising kind of legs kind of shoot off of that.
Exactly. You got it.
Perfect. Is there anything that you would say like really distinguishes itself? Like, is Avalanche just like the blockchain? Or are there some parts of kind of Avalanche when it's being referred to that does refer to anything outside of just the platform?
Usually, yeah, that's a good question, and I guess it's really subjective. When someone refers to Avalanche, they're referring to usually one of three things. It can be one, the platform; two, the token; or three, the community.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Especially if you're active on X, everyone's like, "Oh, Avalanche, is making moves, or Avalanche is doing this." It's kind of just referring it to it as a whole, and it can be confusing, definitely, if you're not used to it.
Mhm.
But in general, how we kind of like to officially throw around terms is, yeah, Avalanche is the blockchain. Whether that blockchain is, the C chain, or whether it's an L1 that's spun up by a team who wants their own sovereign block space, you're still running Avalanche technology, even though it's your own sovereign block space, but it's still part of Avalanche, right? Your blockchain is validating the network as a whole. We like to call it a network of networks.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for distinguishing that. It's one of the first questions that I kind of had, and it's really not that complicated. And I think it's just important to distinguish those things. If I think that if there's one thing that people who are in the world of Web3 like to do is finding all different names to describe all sorts of different parts of the blockchain, of the business, of everything. I believe that it's not for no good reason. These are
Yep.
important pieces to put in place so that there's no confusion about what is happening, what's being referred to. Now, of course, the communities can always take and run with whatever they want. They can create their own abbreviation for Avalanche, and that's just what happens. It kind of takes off like that, and who's to say, where things like that kind of come from and where they go. But I think it's great altogether to have differentiation between these two kind of legs. But yeah, with crypto, everybody will always refer to it in different ways and pronounce things in different ways. But all that matters is that Avalanche is there, is ready for deployment for the growing demand of verifiable digital ownership in today's age. So, kind of before
Absolutely.
we dive a little bit more into some of these things related to your role as well as what's going on with Ava Labs and Avalanche, why don't we just hear a little bit from you, Chris, about your journey? Sounds like you kind of got into biology and then artificial intelligence, and now here you are. We're going to learn about your role, but it sounds like you're kind of community facing here. So I think just right off the bat, it seems really great that you have a really deep kind of technical background, but having that person at Avalanche to bridge that gap between technicalities and just what meets the eye. Why come and be a part of this community? So share a little bit about your journey that led you here.
Yeah, it's funny always. Whenever I tell someone I majored in biology for my undergrad, they're like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" I was like, "Well, there's a past involved with that." It's yeah, I grew up, being very tech savvy. I loved tech. I loved hacking things. I remember I was very young and I hot swapped my Xbox 360 and I was able to do like modded Call of Duty zombies,
I did
and
that as
everyone was like,
well.
"How did you?" Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, "How did you do that?" I was like, "Well, I mean, I just looked it up. I bought a CD from Office Depot. Back then, it was really hard to find. It was like a CD that had 16 gigabytes of drive space on it.
Hmm.
I don't know how to say it for a CD technically, but um, and then it was expensive at the time. I remember that 16 gigabyte CD was like $50 or something.
Hmm.
Anyway, Dad helped me out back then. And then I hot swapped it. I looked it up, and there you go. And I found that really fascinating. And that wasn't only it. I remember I started making money myself, hosting Minecraft servers. And everyone's like, "Well, how'd you spin up a Minecraft server?" I was like, "It's pretty straightforward, And kind of, maintaining those servers. It's the same thing we see today in blockchain as founders, right? You have a community. You need to cater to the community. And if you're just launching something and you don't know what you're launching, it's you're going to set yourself up for failure. So you got to make the connections first. And just like, in gaming servers or whatever it is, there's different niches, just like we see in blockchain. It's like, okay, in blockchain, we have AI, we have DePIN, we have, degeneracy. We have all sorts of things. So assembling a team, finding the right people, whether it's exploring communities in the beginning, that's kind of what I learned in the beginning. Anyway, besides the point. Um, Being very technical, I worked in IT in the beginning as well. While I was very intrigued in biology and nutrition and the human body, I was really into fitness. I was like, let me, I really like chemistry and physics and biology. I was like, biology kind of combines all of those things as well as math, right? Biology is kind of the end of it. So, you can't have biology if you don't have chemistry. You can't have chemistry if you don't have physics. And you can't have physics if you don't have math, right?
Cool.
So, kind of come back to math on everything.
I like that.
Um, yeah. So doing biology, I really learned, how systems work, right? How the human body works. Collaborating with your peers, your colleagues,
Hmm.
memorizing every single bacteria that's infectious or every single virus, kind of how it all works as an ecosystem. So I think, bridging those together kind of led me to where I am today. And then my position in IT really taught me how architecture works, right? So in IT, I worked with a lot of cloud solutions, people who needed cloud solutions, whether it was through AWS, GCP, OCI, which is Oracle's cloud. Um, Putting that all together, it really comes back into Avalanche. Out for example, Ava Cloud, right? They're a cloud service. They build things with it's just kind of like cloud. It's just like AWS, right? So that's kind of where it led me today. And then I've been in Avalanche since 2021. Kind of got to know the community back then. Very involved, helped build a couple DeFi protocols. Launched my own NFT project as well during the NFT craze, good times.
Hmm.
And then worked Web 2 and then kind of found my way into this position here at Avalanche just over time.
Wow, that's really spectacular. Great summary of your experience there. And I want to kind of just emphasize for everyone watching this video back, what really stood out to me was how you mentioned biology and how it helped you see how systems work. I am a huge believer of kind of almost like this cyclical nature of, micro. Representing itself in the macro and vice versa. I think it happens in the economy all over the place, and psychology all over the place, and kind of not super duper micro, but micro enough to just examine, how the human body just functions. You have all of these different roles, all of these different physical parts, but they all come together for a purpose of, creating energy, entropy, and just overall survival, and hopefully, evolution of thought. So to me, tying that kind of sounds like you did biology, but before that, you mentioned that you started your own server on Minecraft. And to me, like that
Multiple.
speaks to like you're not just somebody who sits there and participates. Like you see an opportunity to do something, to add something more than that's already there, or even to improve upon something that's already there that you think could be done better. So kind of just like tying all that in, like I think it's really cool. Just and I think it makes a lot of sense how you've found yourself where you're at. So if you need any validation, hear it from me. Even though some people might be kind of surprised, as you mentioned, whenever they ask how you got where you are, I think you probably see the through line through all of it. And I think that gives me a lot of confidence with the role that you have as ecosystem growth for Ava Labs. So anything more you want to add there before we start asking a little bit more about ecosystem growth itself?
No, I mean, just the kind of closing thought on that point is that there's a lot of overlap that we see. Mainly comes from communities, right? How do you kind of please the community? That's the most important thing, especially with a community such as Avalanche. We see in these blockchain communities, it's very siloed. You want to make sure if you're in ecosystem growth or business development, whatever you're doing, that you're catering for your audience and you're really painting not just the picture that they want to see, right? You don't want to be an echo chamber. You got to kind of go past that room. You have to really make sure that people are understanding the bigger picture. We're not just like telling people to buy the green candles, right? It's not all about green candles. It's much more than that, and it's important to also relay that information to the community.
Totally. Yeah, and that really just kind of, naturally brings us to the idea and your role as ecosystem growth. Would you say that it's like, you're the lead of ecosystem growth, or are you just ecosystem growth? Like that's just your title, or how do you kind of introduce yourself?
So it's a good question. I wouldn't say I'm the lead of ecosystem growth just because at the business development team at Avalanche or Ava Labs,
Hmm.
where we all kind of deal with different verticals, right? So me personally, I'm on the AI and infrastructure team. That doesn't mean that I don't, talk with other teams or I don't help my colleagues with what they need help with. But more specifically, I introduce myself as ecosystem growth for AI and infrastructure. I help the foundation a lot, so I work very closely with the guys over at the foundation. We have a couple programs. Basically, we have AI. So it's called the Infrabiddle AI grant system. So for that one, we are providing teams that are providing crucial AI infrastructure or data or agents or whatever it is, products that are gonna basically blow up the Avalanche ecosystem. So you got to do due diligence there. You got to make sure that these guys are basically providing key products, and we can get into some specifics on some teams there in a little bit. But that's just one example, right? And that's a grant. It's non dilutive. It's not like the hard commitment. The infrastructure does have to live on Avalanche. Obviously, nowadays the meta is being chain agnostic. You can't you can't just build on one chain and expect to stay there and expect to be successful, right? We want we want projects to be chain agnostic. How are you going to bridge that gap that we have between blockchains, right? It's as we see in Web 2 also, like you can't just have one major guy. You got to have multiple major players. Same with cloud, right? That's why we have AWS. That's why we have GCP, etc. So yeah, to answer your question, I do I'm on the AI and infrastructure team.
Awesome. Cool. So how many different people are kind of on your team? And would you say that it's kind of, all focused around towards kind of the center of focus for you guys? Or is it kind of outwardly focused towards the grander scheme of things, more just general marketing kind of pursuits? Or kind of how would you overall describe the scope of your role in your team?
Yeah, so good question. You saw back in the early days, right? Like 2021, chains were almost all the same, right? What everyone offered was almost
Hmm.
identical. All the L1s were the same. There was very minor differences. Um, there was no difference between building anywhere else. But then after 2021, that's where you saw, you know, kind of where the boom came in. So Ethereum took over DeFi. Solana took over memes. That's why Solana grew so much to what they are today, et cetera. And then Avalanche right now, as they're more focused on institutions. That the whole point of kind of this L1 architecture, this L1 ecosystem, is to provide that true decentralization that institutions can trust in. Right? They can be completely sovereign. We offer something that no one else offers. So I'm getting to the
Of
question here,
course.
but what we offer is a proof of authority if needed L1 block space that you can spin up without having to validate the public chain. What does that mean? If you don't have to validate the public chain, you're compliant. You don't have to deal with compliance issues or any issues at the institution level that says, hey, like we can't really use this technology because we're going to be validating transactions that we don't know what they are, right? We can get into big trouble if it's something that's not okay. So Avalanche offers that, right? Anyone can go spin up their own L1 and it costs like 1.33 AVAX, which is one validator for that chain. So the whole goal here is burned AVAX, sovereign block space. Anyone can come in and adopt this technology, mint whatever, mint stable coins, et cetera, et cetera. So to answer your question, yeah, our focus is definitely institutional use cases, but we do support all verticals because we have the power to, if that makes sense. Um, the technology here kind of offers the ability for anyone to build any purpose-driven application, right? Just like back in the day, in the 2000s, we took for granted websites. Everyone was like, "Well, why would I want a website? That doesn't make sense." I have a business, not a website. And then today we're looking at the same exact thing. People are like, "Well, why do I want a blockchain? I have a business. I have this technology. What's the point of a blockchain, right?" And slowly it's becoming like websites where in the future everyone wants a website. If you ask anyone today, if you're looking for a job, people want a website. If you're, if you're in the job market, do you want to put your resume on a website, right? It looks cool. And that's just the simplest example.
Hmm.
So that's kind of where blockchain is going towards, right? Everyone can have purpose built blockchains for their use case, whatever it may be. And the barrier to entry is becoming easier and easier, and that's what Avalanche is hoping to achieve.
Cool. Love that. And yeah, something you mentioned kind of when we first started tipping into the idea of ecosystem growth is just how siloed all these different communities are. And I totally agree with what you mentioned, how in kind of 2020, 2021, kind of just emerging out of the big NFT craze, I would say, I think there was just like this big wave of really kind of disillusionment with regard to what really blockchain is here for. And it's unfortunate that the nature of Web3, speaking broadly here, is so disruptive that it influences and encroaches on a lot of power structures and financial structures that are already in place from all of humanity up to this point in time. And it's hard sometimes to distinguish who are the good players who might just misunderstand what the tech is aiming towards, and who's actually trying to almost get in the way, almost disrupt the disruption that is coming about through blockchain. So I guess from your perspective, like in my research, it looks like Avalanche kind of came out from some students from Cornell. They got their way into Wall Street, found their way into where the money is. Like you need resources to build, to grow, to get the word out there. I think Avalanche has been incredibly successful in this realm. As I mentioned again, they have the infrastructure to support the community, and it's just a really like self kind of fulfilling prophecy, almost a positive feedback loop there. So I guess in your role and with Avalanche, what could other blockchains implement to achieve this same momentum that Avalanche has, right? Because everybody wants everyone to build on their blockchain. They want people to come to them, and sure, there may be some monetary motivation there for everyone. But if somebody's just building a quality product, they're like, hey, I really think this is going to add a lot of noise to this ecosystem. Like, how would you say that people can kind of get people to maybe use one of the smaller guys rather than just be like, oh, like I see Avalanche is killing it, they have all this stuff going on? Like, what are your perspectives on this?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it can go in many
Yeah.
directions. So I guess we can start here by saying you can have customization on Avalanche, for example, without validator bootstrapping. Usually on other chains, you're going to run into that issue. Well, where do my validators come from? How much do we have to pay for this, et cetera, et cetera. Avalanche is really strong on that front, as well as infrastructure control and compliance logic just baked into the chain automatically. You don't have to worry about any of that.
Hmm.
If other chains can kind of pivot their technology so these big guys can come in and be like, oh, that's that's something that we can kind of utilize, so our investors are happy, our governments are happy, etc. That's something that they can achieve as well. But Avalanche is good on that front, and I think it'll take a long time before anyone catches up on that. Um, and then you also have the performance at scale without having the EVM trade offs. As we know, usually EVM comes with performance trade-offs. Avalanche solved that with their consensus mechanism. I'm not going to go too much into detail on how the consensus works, but TLDR summary is basically it's through subsampling. So you have a lot of validators that are ready, and through the subsampling method or algorithm, we can reach a consensus much faster than any other chains can. And going back to what you said earlier, which is the Cornell professors and students who made the blockchain, they're geniuses. They came up with this algorithm, and that's why we see Avalanche being one of the fastest blockchains out there. Um, Another feedback I commonly get from teams I speak to, especially startups or smaller companies, is the support that we offer at Avalanche. They always come to me. They say it's unmatched. Other chains, when they reach out, or if they do reach out and they want to reach out again, it's a mess.
Yeah.
no one really listens to them. No one wants to help them with what they need, even if it's the simplest thing, such as marketing support or whatever it is, or grants that are offered, etc. They always say Avalanche wins on that front. Obviously, it's a little more complicated than that, but that's just some feedback that I get.
Mhm.
Um, and then I guess one last thing is the app chains can encode their own native token into their chain. So if you're spinning up an L1 and you have your own token, you can use that token as a gas token. You don't have to use the AVAX token as gas. Do we prefer AVAX token as gas? Yeah, I mean, we're burning more AVAX. It's just better for everyone. But if you want to have your own token for your whatever tokenomic model that you're running, so your users are happy or you're happy or your kind of infrastructure is running better, yeah, you can absolutely do that. Again, it's full customization at your hands with these blockchains, and everything's open source. Everything is really easy to read. Honestly, even if you're semi-technical, you can come into these documentations, read them, and you're like, oh wow, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because a lot of these people, if I go to the Ethereum documentation right now, like, forget it, right? I'm not super technical. I am pretty technical, but I'm not like, I'm not a software engineer. So it really helps when you can kind of bridge that gap between technicality and non-technicality.
Totally. So if you were to leave Ava Labs and basically want to begin as the CEO your own blockchain, what is one or two things that you would really copy from Avalanche's playbook?
One or two things.
Is that too hard? One or
Wow,
two
that's
things?
no,
Ten
that's
specific
no,
things.
that's actually a very good question. Well, first of all, I wouldn't have to copy anything, but I know your question. I would just come and build my own L1 using Avalanche's technology, right? Why would I do that? I would do that because it's very inexpensive.
Hmm.
I don't like to use the word cheap here because cheap
Right.
is not a fun word to use. It's very inexpensive. I can get my application going instantly. I think they just broke the record for the fastest L1 launch. It was 16 minutes or
Wow.
something from start to finish. Yeah, absolutely insanity. Um, it's inexpensive, it's scalable, and I can do it exactly how I want to do. I don't have to worry about my consensus mechanism. I don't have to worry about liquidity. I don't have to worry about users. I can bridge. I can have my own L1 and tap into the C chain and use whatever I want from the C chain, because remember, it's a network of networks.
Mhm.
There's horizontal scaling. We have, and so yeah, that's one thing I also wanted to touch on. We have ICM, which is our interchain messaging protocol. It's our native kind of interchain language that where chains can speak to each other, and that does burn gas as well. So kind of one of the metrics that we want to see among many others is how many ICM messages are you sending between your chain and the C chain, or your chain and another L1 on our network. So taking all of those into account is why I would choose Avalanche.
Got it. So you would not start from scratch. You would just say, "Hey, why would I try to build something different? Avalanche has already got it going on." Nothing wrong with that, and I don't blame you for gassing up Avalanche and telling more people about it. So I wanted to address what you mentioned about the positive feedback that you seem to receive about how much support there is when new builders, new developers kind of reach out to Ava Labs. I guess I'll just refer to it as that, but I'll use them interchangeably. But yeah, so in my conversations, and I think obviously artificial intelligence is a huge buzzword. It's a huge craze, and in years past when ChatGPT really commercialized the access to artificial intelligence, I think it sent this huge ripple, this huge shockwave through the entire world, really. And similarly to how in the NFT craze of 2021, that sent kind of shockwaves, another kind of blow off top, similar to when Bitcoin hit $20,000 for the first time in 2017. It's like just like this concept of like people's attention getting pulled to something and then they look away, and it's like, is there going to be a double take? Is there going to be a triple take? And at what point do people really look and don't look away again, right? So kind of translating that into the conversation around I feel like artificial intelligence is one of those things that it came about, captured a lot of attention, and yeah, maybe some people looked away, but I think it immediately captured a huge audience. I think it was one of the most powerful user base increases that the world has ever seen. ChatGPT, maybe some others. But I guess I just want to hear, and this is a question really targeting answers about how Avalanche is going to continue to compete. Because, say, as time goes, processing power increases, just systems altogether are tightening up. You know, people are learning from mistakes of the past, such that they did from EVM. So the competition is going to continue to heat up. It's going to be net positive for builders and, business creators across the board, and then especially like right now Avalanche has it going, like we have really great feedback with how people are responding to us and the support we're able to give them. But in a world where there's an AI agent who is able to onboard people into a blockchain that is just as powerful as Avalanche, like in your opinion, like how do you see kind of the competition heating up? How do you see Avalanche continuing to play a role? And yeah, I mean, like, there's just so much opportunity. We're so early. It's easy to be like, well, everybody's going to win. The whole pie is going to get bigger. Nobody's really going to be taking from one another's pieces. But let's pretend that we're already capping. We're already at the top, and everyone is really competing for users. Like, what do you think are some of the most important kind of groundwork pieces that Avalanche is laying or has laid that's going to continue to keep it in this upwards momentum state?
Fantastic question. And I kind of want to just go back to what you said in the beginning there is, this whole chat GPT craze, right? If you threw the word AI around pre 2020, I mean, everyone knew what AI was, right? But what did they think it was? They thought it was a robot, right? If you said AI, you would think of the movie Robot,
Mm-hmm.
or you would think of, humanoids or whatever it is. It's changed, right? And when you say AI now, it's just a technical term. Everyone's like, oh yeah, AI is everywhere. Um, Apple has had AI around for a really long time, right? I remember when they announced AI on the iPhone 2 years ago during their Apple Summit or Apple Keynote, and then the stock shot up like what was it, 30% or something. Well, people like the buzzwords. People like you know these silly things that stockholders get bullish on.
Mm-hmm.
Apple's been using AI since 2015 or 2016 for their crash detection on the Apple Watch, amongst other things. That's 100% AI. It's not just AI is not just LLMs. It's not just chatbots. It's solving problems that might be harder to solve if you were a human, right? Because a human, not really human, I guess, like traditional Web 2 technology. How can you detect a crash if you're just traditional tech? That's how AI helps. To go back to your question, let's say we're all at the top. How is Avalanche gonna, be ahead of the curve on this? Well, right now in traditional Web 2 with AI, there's a lot to collaborate on. I think that's what blockchain is missing right now, right? If I were an AI developer on Web 2, what would I do? I would go to Hugging Face, right? Hugging Face is where, it's the GitHub of AI. It's where all the models live, all the data lives, whatever you need, data sets, etc. Um, Anyone could come and collaborate, whether you're coming from Google, whether you're coming from Microsoft, or wherever you're coming from. We're missing that in Web3 right now. You know, if you're building AI on chain, right? You don't really care if it's Avalanche or Ethereum or Base or whatever it is. You want intelligence on chain that can navigate, that can move through smart contracts, that can move through barriers, with no issues. You want to be EVM compatible. You want to be, Rust or Go compatible, whatever you want. Um, so we do have someone solving that issue. We have a team called Kite AI, which is kind of our flagship AI protocol. They are on testnet right now. They plan to go live within the next few months, I would say. Just to summarize what Kite AI is, they're a purpose built layer one blockchain. So they have their own sovereign block space. Anyone can build on top of them. Yes, they're using Avalanche technology, but like we said earlier, these purpose built layer ones are for anyone. Just because you're using an Avalanche layer one doesn't mean you're Avalanche. No, you're your own company. You can do whatever you want. Going back to the website analogy, so it's a purpose built layer one blockchain. Their whole goal is to empower fair and trustless collaboration with data models and agents, and they're kind of key term is proof of attributed intelligence, or proof of AI. The whole point of this is to ensure fair attribution and rewards for AI contributors. So think of anyone going on Hugging Face, collaborating, but you're not going to get rewarded for what you're doing. You're not going to get rewarded for your work. Um, Anyone can kind of just come in, and if it's bad work, right, you can sell bad work. That's not good. It's not something that you want to be a part of, which is why you don't really see Hugging Face thrown around. It's more of like, if you know
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thing. Kite AI is going to come and solve that, and they're doing that through, I guess you can say, they're democratizing AI resources. So kind of breaking down barriers to AI access with this infrastructure. So anyone, if you're a person or you're an organization, you can truly own your AI and you can truly do whatever you want with it. Um, they do offer the ability to build your own blockchain on top of their blockchain. So they have, like, subnets. Any, a team that's building, whether it's an AI agent or an AI data layer, you can come and build your own subnet on top of them. It just kind of goes to the point of what we said earlier, where, how are we going to be on top? How it's this collaboration effort.
Hmm. Cool. Yeah. I mean, thanks for wrapping it back around there, because that's kind of what I wanted to ask for clarifying about. Like, just kind of like yes or no. It sounds like something missing huge right now in Web3 is just collaboration.
I 100% think that.
Yeah.
I think the issue is, everyone is trying to build the same thing right now.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised. I talk to a lot of teams that are almost building the same thing. Key differences here and there, and I really believe that if these teams collaborated somehow, some way with their users, that you're going to achieve the result you want faster, right?
Mhm.
And these are really smart people, right? Smarter than I'll ever be. These guys are geniuses. They're building insane
Mhm.
products. Um, and I really want this community to really know, hey, this is where you should be building. This is where you're going to get the most
Yeah.
support. These are where your users are going to be. These are the people who are interested, who can help you really put your product where it should be.
Totally. Yeah, I think that that has, from my perspective anyway, has been an issue in Web3 space for a long time. And especially being the host of this podcast, I've sat across the screen from a lot of people and preparing for interviews. It's like, oh, another L1. Like, let's see how we can try to nitpick how this is really different and what really differentiates it. So that's a huge thing that I see. I've been in the space just as a kind of a champion of blockchain since 2017, but now I'm trying to make more noise. It's like, all right, how do we make the noise make sense? And it's like everyone is kind of like, yeah, like we all want to grow the pie, like so we all win. And it just reminds me of in high school when I was running cross country and the coach was standing up saying, hey, cross country is a team sport. It's like, sure, but only one person stands on the podium with the gold medal. And that just reminds me really just of the cyclical nature of these blockchains when it comes to the charts. Not to talk about charts, but just the idea of like, sure, like whenever the craze is up and everyone's winning, that's great. But what about whenever things are really down and funds are really running dry and the bear market has no end in sight? Like we don't like to lose money. We don't like to see businesses and ideas fail, but it's survival of the fittest, and people and businesses and just like the whole internal infrastructure of what they're doing and how they're disseminating that information and gathering community. Like sure, like somebody might be standing on the podium with a gold medal, championing greatest community and fastest block times, all this stuff, but it's like they deserved it. And if they are first place, then maybe there's a good reason that they're there. Maybe there's good reason that people should be discouraged from trying to start from scratch. It's like don't reinvent the wheel. And big time, it's like, has the wheel been invented, right? And the wheel in this analogy being blockchain itself, like has the wheel been invented? Like is it in cement, or is there still opportunity for somebody to come out with something truly revolutionary? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And we're seeing it in real time. And before we get into that, I kind of also want to pivot answer the question and pivot into another point,
Totally.
which is how do you be successful, right? How do you come into the space and how do you become successful? Who's like, what are the teams who are becoming successful? What are they doing right? And the teams who are failing, what are they doing wrong?
Totally.
Um, we can say that, or I can say at least that, the teams that come into the space that are, I guess, succeeding is they really know how to take it. I'm going to say take advantage. That's fine. You're taking advantage. You have to. So like you said, it's survival of the fittest. Take advantage of the community at hand, right? If I'm building on Avalanche, what do I have to do? Well, okay, my infrastructure lives on Avalanche. That dang well means that, hey, I need as much support as I can get.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you don't do your own research, right? That doesn't mean that you don't go and see what communities care for. It doesn't mean you don't go and do join Telegram group chats, right? Because a lot of our users live on Telegram naturally. You want to see what the Telegram users want before you want to cater into your Web2 audience. Your Web2 audience doesn't care about blockchain. They care about what you're building. They care about the product, the idea, more than the idea. They want to see results, obviously.
Hmm.
The Web2 user wants to use the application without signing any transactions. They don't want to use MetaMask. They don't want to use Core. They don't want to do any of that, right? That's more for the Web3 audience, which is fine. That's perfectly okay. So how are you bridging the gap between Web3 and Web2? That is the biggest number one thing that I search for if I want to invest in a team, if I want to give them my resources. And that doesn't mean that I won't give resources, right?
Totally.
It's just, it's a factor. So yeah.
I love you just kind of interjecting there, pivoting and sharing those key points of what teams are doing right versus what they're kind of doing wrong. I just really want to draw out as much of that from this conversation as possible, but don't want to avoid highlighting any other key signals that are out there in the space about what Avalanche is doing, and wanted to touch on some huge hitters such that FIFA is launching its own blockchain powered by Avalanche. Something just really, I think a lot of people have seen kind of developing, but as of late, just having somebody like FIFA kind of come along, and they have new ideas that about it's like a right to buy tickets, and you have to buy these NFTs. Like, you could get lost in the details for sure, but FIFA, hopefully most people watching this video know about it, is launching their own blockchain powered by Avalanche. So it's like, I don't want to show Avalanche too much, but it's like, hey, if FIFA's doing it, why shouldn't you, right? If Avalanche can support FIFA, then they could probably support you too. But again, I want to be chain agnostic. I think everyone is doing great things here, but like I said, don't want to shy away from congratulating Avalanche on the successes that they're seeing. This was, announced maybe like last month or something like that. So what can you speak about what's brand new, fresh, exciting in the corner of Avalanche, and just kind of what's on the horizon for you all?
Yeah. Just to circle back really quick on the FIFA
Yeah.
announcement, is it's a lot bigger than people think it is, because all people know right now is their FIFA Collect application is living on the blockchain. It's not just FIFA Collect, and like you said, it might be a little over complicated, but it's really not. Basically, what it sets is, okay, now that FIFA Collect is on the blockchain, and these NFTs may give you the right to buy a ticket. Down the line, these tickets may most likely will move onto the blockchain,
Hmm.
and all of the ticketing and all of the processing for FIFA for the World Cup is going to live on blockchain, not just the right to buy tickets, right? It sets that foundation, and it's something that over time will move over into Avalanche. That's something that's very exciting, something that we're all excited for, right? It's real world use cases. It's not just noise that people are not using. Along with TickSpace, I want to give a shout out to that team. So TickSpace is I mean, maybe you've heard of them.
I haven't. No. Tell me
Uh,
about it.
okay, yeah, they are. They're a ticketing platform. They already have big pilot companies that want to issue tickets under them. Their own sovereign L1, basically competition to Ticketmaster, you can say.
Hmm.
Um, obviously you're competing with big guys like Ticketmaster, but if you're using this new technology and catching up and throwing around the correct words, that's where investors care. That's where people care or governments care. Um, for example, the Genius Act just passed the Senate on Tuesday, I think it was. That's huge news, right? Obviously, they had to go back and revise, right? They had to say these corporates can't issue their own stablecoins. That's fine, right? These are just guidelines. So now that it passed the Senate, it's going to go to the House, which it's most likely going to pass, and it's going to become an official law, right? These these wins, these small, medium, or big wins over time, they're really going to add up. And the early players that are, taking advantage right now, they're the ones who are going to be very successful in the future.
Awesome. So what about beyond FIFA, beyond regulation, beyond stablecoins? If there's some huge big points on the horizon for Avalanche that you want to touch on, or else we can kind of close out with some general more thoughts from your side.
Yeah, bigger picture is more and more stablecoin projects are becoming integrated into, whether it's Avalanche or whether it's a network of stable coins, whether it's getting integrated. For example, I think it was yesterday, Ubix, they just raised $10 million for their seed round, right? And they're a settlement network for stablecoin, and I'm pretty sure they're already on rails with banks such as Citibank, and as well as the Japanese bank SMBC, the second largest bank in Japan. And by the way, they have their own layer one. There you go. They're settling. They're moving money around internally on an Avalanche L1. So it's these kinds of projects that are getting bigger and bigger, raising more money, becoming more legitimate, having government adoption. That's really something to look out for. But yeah, I would love to finish off as well with some key metrics that are coming in from Avalanche. Some
Yeah, let's hear it.
uh, you know, let's do it. So earlier this week, Avalanche launched a battle pass, a gaming battle pass. So just as like on Fortnite or whatever game you like to play, you can go download the battle pass, mint it as an NFT, and now mostly all, obviously, they're working with a lot of the games. That battle pass is directly associated with all of these games on Avalanche, whether it's Spellborn or Off the Grid or all of these other big games that are on Avalanche. If you complete these actions in these games, and it's all connected, it's all intertied, right? So you're not just playing Fortnite and earning a battle pass. You're playing Fortnite and Call of Duty. You're playing all the big games, for example, as a comparison, and leveling up your battle pass. So that was a really really cool update, and the gaming community is very excited about that
I
one.
bet.
I also wanted to mention as well, for anyone who's listening who doesn't know about Off the Grid. So Off the Grid, made by the AAA game studio Gunzilla. It's a battle royale game. A lot of the developers and game designers are ex Activision. So this game, own tokenomics, own economy. It's on Xbox, PlayStation, Steam, and Epic Games. That's what it was, and it's cross compatible, and the technology lives on Avalanche blockchain.
That's super
That was
cool.
huge. Yeah, it's really really refreshing to see that these big AAA games are coming onto Avalanche and they're having success, right? Um, and all those tools are available, right? So if anyone wants to come and do something like this, Avalanche gives them the ability to create these wallets if they have to live on an account that's on Epic Games or on Steam. All of that kind of intertwining moving parts, it's possible on Avalanche.
Yeah, that's really great. And I'm glad that you took the initiative to talk about some of these metrics, some of these brand new things that are coming up, and people building new exciting things, especially gaming on blockchain, I think is a huge, mostly untapped industry. And basically just wanted to kind of wrap around and make my final notes, just kind of drawing that wisdom from what you're saying. And you were talking about how just, how the idea of competition, you said something about just framing it and kind of delivering it in such a way, and I think this was in the conversation we were talking about, maybe ticketing or something like that. But just kind of like a epiphany I sort of had. It's like for this person building on Avalanche that's championing the ticketing, sure, they're competing with Ticketmaster, great, but how are they going to compete? They're not, stepping into the ring with Ticketmaster. They're stepping up to the plate and telling people a story. Hey, this is what we're doing differently. Like, we're not competing with Ticketmaster. We're better than Ticketmaster. So how do we let investors know that? How do we let users know that? They don't need to get into the ring and battle it out with Ticketmaster. They just need to keep doing what they're doing. And I think that just in general can, be extrapolated to all these different areas of life, of just don't get caught too much on the goal of like, oh, I want to be the next huge blockchain, but really just taking kind of like back a step. Like Avalanche is one of many platforms that can probably support your Web3 visions. They're doing a really great job at it. There's a lot of reasons to go with Avalanche than others, but at the end of the day, what are you building? And who is it going to compete? And what story are you going to be able to tell? Because Avalanche can support that mission. Sounds like relatively easily. You mentioned how quickly another L1 deployed on Avalanche. So I think we're just nearing, ever approaching this point of real just kind of acceleration in the space. There's a lot of discussion about how AI agents are going to abstract the blockchain away from its users, almost becoming the new interface. And it's going to be a much more exciting piece of technology to interact with. So, Chris, thanks so much for your time. Are there any final pieces that you wanted to share with us, or any main points that you'd like for people to leave with the video?
Nothing super specific, Stephen. I really appreciate it. Time went by super fast. Obviously, we just scratched the surface on AI. I guess final thoughts here, if speaking on that topic is, AI is going to be a big player in blockchain. We're going to see agents communicating with each other, speaking to each other. They're going to be driving a lot of transactions on these blockchains. And they're going to be burning a lot of tokens through these transactions, and they're going to be communicating across these smart contracts. And that's something to look out for as these teams are building more and more AI products. So very excited about AI in the space. I think we're going in the right direction. I think DeFi is going to be much more accessible to the average Web2 user because of AI. And we're going to see that really, start making headlines more and more.
Awesome. Yeah, we really touched the surface on really so many things, not to mention AI. But unfortunately, our time has come to a close here. But just wanted to say just a final thank you once again, Chris. Really appreciate you being here. And where can the community get involved online?
The community can come online. They can start over at exploring documentation on the Avalanche website. They can start reaching out to certain communities. Right, we have a lot of communities on Avalanche. You can join our Discord. You can join our Telegram. You can start asking questions there. We have community members and official team members who are there to help with any questions you may have. So we're basically on almost all social media. And feel free, to come ask. If you think it's a stupid question, I promise you it's not a stupid question. We're here to help.
Love it. No stupid questions, just curiosity and just diving in. So, yeah,
Yep.
this has been really spectacular talking with ecosystem growth extraordinaire, Chris Chalfoun. Looking forward to getting this video out so that everyone can draw the wisdom from this video and apply it to whatever it is that they're in love with on the blockchain or whatever else it is. But this has been an awesome episode, awesome conversation. Yeah, thank you again for your time. Wishing you all the best with Avalanche and Ava Labs. And that's all we have for today.
Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate it.
For sure. And that's all. Alrighty. Bye, everybody.
Awesome.